Some exchange betting companies run short-lived promotions, like months-long offers of low commission. At BetDAG, we wanted to change the way we did things, so we set our commission at 2% permanently. That's 2% on football, horse racing, golf, almost any sport. 2%. That's just one way that BetDAG is changing for the better. For the better, like you. BetDAG, the 2% commission exchange.
Over 18s only, please gamble responsibly.
Hello and welcome back to the ROKER RAPPORT Extra podcast. You join us following quite an enjoyable weekend down at Rochdale, which saw a last-minute George Honeyman goal grab all 3 points at Scotland. And it was an even better weekend considering that Barnsley dropped points as well, and it puts us right in the driving seat. Now, to be honest with you, we are speaking to you before our rearranged midweek game against Burton Albion, so hopefully by the time you're listening to this, we're sitting comfortably in the automatic spot with games in hand. But moving on to Saturday's game, which is the one we're previewing today, we've got George Baker, who is a bit of an expert on Coventry. How are you, George? Are you well?
I am good, thank you. How are you?
Yes, I'm not doing too bad. As I was saying, we've had a pretty good weekend since Wembley. Wembley was a bit of a heartache, but we've responded in the right way. We've responded in the right way.
Yeah, so it's best.
So I want to start off with some of the good stuff. I think it's fair to say Coventry's return to League One's been a pretty bloody successful one, hasn't it? What's been the cornerstone to your, should we say, successful return to the third tier after last season's promotion?
Well, I'd say that we've kept together most of the core of what was successful last year in League Two. Apart from, obviously, we lost Mark McNulty in the summer, which has been a huge loss. But aside from that, we've obviously got a good manager who knows the club. He's been here twice now. And we've just got a good group of players. They're all young, hungry, all looking to improve in the game. And I think it's just sort of, especially since the turn of the year, it's sort of gelled quite well. And, you know, we're on the cusp of the playoffs. Whether we get that is another question. But like you say, it's been a successful season and better than I would have expected. I was half thinking we were going to be involved in a relegation battle, but it's nice to just have a sort of relaxed end to the season.
Yeah, because, I mean, one of the toughest games we've had this year was at the Ricoh Arena. I mean, we never do well down at Coventry, to be completely honest with you, but you seemed like quite a solidified team. You knew your lineup, you knew your formation, you knew your job. So I think it goes a long way, doesn't it? Yeah,
without a doubt. Like, we've sort of stuck to a similar sort of 4-4-2 sort of formation, although we've changed a bit to 4-2-3-1 recently, given injuries and things. But yeah, it's always the sort of first names on the team sheet week in, week out. So fans know what they're going to get and what to expect, and that sort of worked for us this year.
How big of a loss was Mark McNulty going?
He's been huge, to be honest. He's such a natural goal scorer, and he proved that last year with 25, 26 goals, whatever it was. And you see, it didn't quite work for him at Reading, but he's gone up to Scotland with Hibs and he's firing again. So it just shows how good of a player he is. And we've brought players in who have got goals in them, but not to that level. So our top scorer is Jordi Hawula, who I think he's got 10 in all competitions. And he's been a good signing, but it's just sometimes we're lacking that cutting edge, which McNulty offered.
Because I was looking through the amount of goals that your team scored, and it's very much shared about. As you say, there's no one that really stands out as like that number one sort of goal getter, shall we say. And I think a lot of the problem, from what I was reading on the game against Bristol Rovers, he did everything but score. For people who don't know, the score was 0-0, but that's where it's affecting you, isn't it, realistically?
Yeah, that's been our problem all season, and perhaps why we aren't further towards the playoffs than perhaps we could have been. There's been so many times where we've had players in good positions and they've just not had that instinct or ability to have the composure to, you know, give us the lead or whatever. Like, I'm sure in the game against you, Connor Chaplin went through late on and probably should have scored. So that's just one example, but there's been countless times, and you know, you add them up, points missed, and we'd been in a much better position than we are now.
The player that worried me most down at Coventry was Johnson Clark-Harris, and I was amazed to see him let go to Bristol Rovers. What was the story behind that?
I was just as amazed as you are, to be honest, because, you know, he does what he says on the tin, really. He's a big centre forward that's going to, annoy players and defenders, and he wasn't that clinical for us, which is amazing seeing how well he's done at Bristol Rovers, but he just offered something different. And I think what happened was he didn't quite fit into the way we wanted to play. We tried to keep the ball on the deck, play it around, but that's not really his game. He's more of a work off the long balls, work off knockdowns and things. And I think perhaps apparently he was still living up that way from his time at Rotherham. So I think it was financially better and geographically better for him. But the fact we didn't get a fee, especially given how well he's done since he's left, is the worrying sort of aspect of it.
He's scored some absolute screamers, hasn't he? Like down at Bristol Rovers, like some of the goals I've seen him score, I'm thinking, what's he doing going? But I suppose if he does live close to Bristol, then that does, I suppose, sort of make a little bit more sense. The one thing that's really impressed me most is, I mean, I'm 32, so I remember Coventry as a Premiership team, and they've always been sort of workmanlike, and obviously you've had that really bad downward trajectory over the years. But one thing I've been quite impressed by, I think, is the amount of young players that you can see coming through. As you said before, it's a young-looking team, fully young players, a lot of them from the academy. For people who don't know, James Maddison, who's obviously now an England international at Leicester, he was turning out in Sky Blue only a couple of years ago. But I've picked out Tom Bayliss and Jordan Willis as the main two sort of young, homegrown academy players. But what's happening at Coventry that has meaning you're producing such good players?
I think it's just the natural progression into first-team football at such an early age. Like, you look at Maddison and even Callum Wilson before him, they were both in and around the first team by the time they were 17 or so. And it just sort of gives players that little platform to get them used to men's football at an earlier rate than some of the players in Premier League academies get. And I think it just gives them that extra step and allows them a bit more time in their career to build their skills. And that's sort of what, especially at this level, we're offering as a club. And we've got a great setup with the academy at the Alan Higgs Centre, which has been, it's produced countless players. And like you say, Tom Bayliss and Jordan Willis are just the current crop at the minute. And we've got Lee Burge, the keeper, and Jordan Shipley as well, who have performed this season and last since they've come into the team. But Tom Bayliss especially, I think, is destined for the Premier League and higher if he can keep at the trajectory he's going.
Yeah, I mean, he's if anyone hasn't watched Tom Bayliss, I've managed to watch him quite a few times this season. He's quite awkward in the way that in the way that he runs almost. He's quite good at getting the ball and driving forward. He's different, isn't he, to like your standard midfielders that you see in this league. There's something definitely there with him.
Definitely. I think it's a bit of a big comparison, but you look at someone like Dele Alli, he's sort of quite a gangly centre midfielder, who gets goals and can carry the ball. And I think that's, like you say, it's something that's not seen in the lower divisions. They're more, get what you say on the tin sort of midfielders who tackle, play simple passes. But Bayliss, you can tell he's got a bit more of a footballing brain than some of the players in this league.
Yeah, he's not a backwards and sideways man. He seems to be the kind of pick it up and thread it through and bomb forward. And he's just 19, isn't he, at the moment?
I think he literally just turned 20 the other day. But but still stupidly young. And so there's been times this season where he just does things, like, how on earth is he playing at this level? And we're so lucky to have him, and I can't see him staying around here for too much longer, to be honest. But we've just got to enjoy him while he's here.
We mentioned Jordan Willis as well. Now, Jordan Willis is obviously a little bit older. He's 24. He's already won the checker trade, which is a bit of a sore point in a way. But he's the captain right now. But he's played over 200 games. And has you mentioned sort of before? Has all of this came from necessity?
It probably is, given our financial troubles and. Having to go to Sixfields in Northampton a few years ago, it's sort of harder to attract, your big name players or players on higher wages. So there is a reliance on the academy to, support the first team. But we're lucky that we're in a position where our academy is, I would say, probably one of the best in the Football League. And some of the graduates that have come through it, like you say, you've got Willis, Bayliss, Maddison, Wilson, the list goes on, even like Cyrus Christie as well. There's countless, and it just shows that we've got that platform for players here.
Yeah, most definitely. Cyrus Christie is definitely one, and I totally forgot about Callum Wilson, another player that's obviously turned out for England this season as well. I heard a little rumor that he didn't put any sell-on fee in his transfer to, I think it was Bournemouth. Is that correct?
Yes. I'm not too sure. I've heard a bit of both. I've heard that we have got one in, but it's not a massive amount. But either way, I think even if it's just 5 or 10%, you've seen figures where he's rumoured to be leaving for 50 million.
Yeah.
So even just a small percentage of that would do us the world of good.
Do you think, I mean, you spoke about Bayliss before, about him being destined for the Premiership, and I'll be honest, you've watched him more than me, but from what I've seen of him, he is really good. But Coventry, when I was young, were always like a Premiership side. They kind of did like the Sunderland thing of staying up by the skin of their teeth every year, 9 times out of 10 at the expense of bloody Sunderland due to late kickoffs and things like that. But do you see Coventry eventually going back there, or do you think the football world we live in now, when you have a good academy, they just get ate up by Premiership clubs that you'll never really be able to build that team to make 2 steps?
I'd definitely like to see us back in the Premier League, especially since I haven't seen us there since I'm only 21. But, I think it's so difficult. Like you say, it's so difficult with all the money in the Premier League, and even in the Championship now, it's hard to even get out of that. And given our position in terms of our owners, that makes it an even bigger challenge. But like you say, the fact our academy players are to a very high quality, and as I said with Bayliss, I can't imagine him staying here for too long. So you're right, there's definitely a case where we need to be climbing up the leagues in order to have these players sort of sticking around. But at the minute, I think it's going to be a huge challenge to sort of keep hold of them and climb up the leagues.
You mentioned about your chairman as well. Now, we've had a great time with our chairman. Really, really changed the club in terms of the community and things. But there's a bit of bother going on with Coventry. What's the backstory?
So, as it stands, we are currently going to be homeless from the Ricoh Arena come the end of the season. The Ricoh, where we play our games, is owned by Wasps Rugby Club, and we rent the stadium from them. And there's been a lot of ongoing legal issues between those two and the Coventry City Council. And there's just a huge standoff with all 3 parties. And at the minute, it's not looking like a new deal is going to be agreed. So we stay at the Ricoh. So as it stands, there's a proposition from the Football League towards the end of April that they could go to a review where the other Football League clubs have to vote whether we stay in the league or not, which isn't just a horrible thought. But there's also the potential, which a lot of fans, all fans aren't happy with, is to ground share next season. Where that'll be, nobody really knows. I know there's been a few clubs that have come forward and said they'd offer their stadium to us, but it's hard to build a future when you don't really have a ground.
And how has it managed to come to that again? Because it's the second time it's happened in short term. I mean, we weren't necessarily well owned by Ellis Shaw for all his, in my opinion, good intentions. But when he sold it on, you've got someone who came on board and really took the bull by the horns in Stuart Donald. But Coventry City seemed to have been mismanaged for quite a while. Some Sunderland fans will be listening to this saying, "Karma," I'm not one of them. But when it comes to like sharing the ground again, how does it get to that state again?
There's a number of elements, and the 3 parties, I think, have all got some part to play in why we're in this situation. But in my opinion, anyway, boils down to the owners. They have had countless times where they could have sold the club and moved on and cut the losses. It hasn't worked out for them here. They tried to make it go at the start. They invested money, then they suddenly cut funding, and as a result, we dropped down the leagues. And I don't quite get what they're holding on to, because at the minute there aren't many assets in the club that's worth sticking around. Why can't they just move on? A new party can come in. I see all these there's all these teams like yourself getting new owners and having a change in fortunes, and it just makes me jealous, but also hopeful that can happen to us. You know, I want to be able to go to a football game and not have to worry that the club doesn't exist in 5 months' time, whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean it's a crazy situation for any club. I would wish it on Newcastle, but not on anyone else. Truth be told, but I mean recent form back on the pitch side of things. You've pulled off some really good results recently. You helped us out against Barnsley. You beat Peterborough at Peterborough, but then you've stuttered against the likes of like Oxford and Bristol Rovers. What's the reason with that? What's happened?
I think it's just a case. For some reason, we just seem to turn up against the better teams in this league, and then
don't say
take
that.
and then we take it a bit for granted against the strugglers, which I really can't explain, to be honest. Whether that's our lack of cutting edge in front of goal, well, because we create a lot of chances in those games against lesser opposition, and I don't know whether it's in the mindset of we'll get plenty of chances, one of them will go in, and they ultimately don't, or teams come like Oxford the other week. They came with a game plan to stop us from playing, and they nicked the goal on the counter-attack. So it's just one of those. I think our play style at the minute suits not having as much of the ball. We've got lots of pace up front, and I think that's where we've started to hurt teams, especially Peterborough away. I think that was arguably our best performance of the season.
What would you say Coventry's style of play is? Because I remember when you played against us, it wasn't so much kick and rush, and that's the day Johnson Clark-Harris was up front. It was a bit more. Well, you mentioned before you play on the ball, play it on the floor a little more.
So we like to keep hold of the ball and play football that is arguably better than what this division is. But at the same time, we have that ability to play on the counter against teams, probably like yourself, who are going to dominate the ball a bit more. So it's a bit of both, really. It's quite a sort of the style of play that's becoming more and more popular in the sort of current game.
Yeah, no, most definitely. You mentioned about how you may set up against us. How would you expect Robins to go against Sunderland? Obviously, different when you're at home, but do you expect them to sit back and try and hit us on the counter?
From what I've seen of us in those bigger games this season, I would think that's most likely the case. I think you've got far more quality within your team than we have. So I think it's going to be the case of try and protect ourselves at 0-0. Sorry, and then try attempts to hit you on the counter attack. Whether that works or not is a different question, but we just have to wait and see.
Yeah. Now, in terms of your own position at the moment, you kind of touched on it again a bit before, but you're 8 points behind Doncaster, who's sitting sixth. It's a big ask, admittedly, but in this league, anything can happen. But is there a feeling around the fan base that you can make it to the playoffs, or do you think it's just a little bit too late?
A couple of weeks ago, we were only 1 point off the playoffs after we beat Peterborough, and I think everyone sort of had hopes and was already thinking of a third trip to Wembley in 3 years. But we got a bit ahead of ourselves, and obviously we've dropped points against the likes of Oxford and Bristol Rovers, and I think that's probably down to the fact we've got such a young squad who potentially aren't quite ready for the pressures that brings. But we've had a very good season, and I think, like you say, I think it's just a bit out of reach now, and we've just got to enjoy the remainder of the season, and perhaps give a few more youngsters a chance ahead of going into the new campaign.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great campaign for Coventry from where you came from, because it's you didn't exactly come out of the automatics. You kind of scraped through the playoffs in the end, and you've came up as probably the best fourth tier side that got promoted into. I think you're the highest placed, aren't you? If I'm right.
Apart from Luton, obviously.
Oh, of course,
yes,
Luton. Yes,
yeah.
Of course, Luton. I forget they were recently promoted.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened there.
You wouldn't think it the way they've been playing, but
no,
it's incredible what they've done this season.
But it's a lot to be said, isn't it, for like keeping the same squad that got you up. Coventry and Luton have both done pretty similar things.
Yeah, and I think that's a part of what's been most successful to what we've done this season. We had a good core of players last season, and the majority of that still is our starting 11, especially the defence and midfield. So continuity is always going to sort of breed success eventually. It's just being able to keep all these players together.
The defence is actually completely unchanged pretty much for about 2 years, and I think we've talked a lot about Bayliss and obviously a lot of other players, but I think as you mentioned Jordan Willis, but him and Dominic Hyam, I think is the correct pronunciation.
Yeah.
They've been solid for the best part of 2 years, haven't they?
Yeah, without a doubt. And in my opinion, I would say Hyam's been our player of the season this year, given the fact that we signed him from Reading, I believe. And
it was Reading, yeah.
Yeah, he wasn't really featuring for them. I think he had a few loans, non-league clubs. He was brought in to be part of our under-23s and develop that way. And he got his chance last year and he took it. And yeah, he's quietly dominating at the back. You wouldn't think it looking at his stature because he's not the biggest and he's not the quickest, but he certainly does his job in the defence and he's been consistent all year round.
On to more slightly negative issues from a Coventry perspective, probably a positive from ours. We've talked an awful lot about Tom Bayliss, but he's not going to be playing on Saturday. He broke his wrist, is that right?
Yes, in the game yesterday? Yeah, Sunday.
And then the man that replaced him, someone we know quite well, David Mailer, dislocated his shoulder. Is that right?
Yep. So, all fun on the injury front.
Yeah, so your midfield's knackered, essentially, yeah?
Yeah, definitely. We've always got Liam Kelly, who obviously start. It's who goes next to him. There's been some talk in the press today that Jordan Shipley is probably most likely to come in to that position. Who's, he can operate pretty much anywhere across the midfield, but I wouldn't say he's as effective as Bayliss or Myler. And then should he get an injury, like it seems to be happening, it's just going to be down to academy kids who, whether they're ready yet remains to be seen. But again, it's going to be a case of if we have to use them. And I suppose, again, this is why our academy is so good as it is, because situations like this bring about opportunities for players of such a young age.
With David Myler, I don't think he's got any chance of playing on Saturday. I think they said he's out for the season as well. But just out of curiosity, how has he got on? Because it's quite a drop from a player that was doing quite well in the Premiership not too long ago. Yeah,
I was very surprised when it was announced that we were signing him. Especially, like you say, he was only a Premier League player, 2 years ago? And he's still in and around the Ireland squad as well. I think he was in the last call-up. He hasn't featured too much or started too many games, but when he's come on or has played, he's looked very assured and probably too good for this level, in a sense that he's got so much maturity about him. He doesn't do anything outlandish. He just plays a simple game, but it's kind of what we need when we've got so many youngsters around. And then there's been a lot of interviews from the younger players saying that even though he's not played every game, he's been such a good personality in the dressing room, talking to them and all that kind of thing. So he's definitely been a good signing. And if the opportunity arose to bring him back in the summer, and I don't know what the situation is with him at Reading, then I'd certainly welcome it.
So with the team on Saturday, with those injury issues that you've got, what would you say your likely lineup's going to be?
So we'll probably be a 4-2-3-1, I would imagine. There'll be Lee Burge in goal. I'd imagine Dujan Sterling and Brandon Mason will start in the fullback positions. And then Hyam and Willis, as we mentioned, in the centre of defence. The two sort of holding midfielders will be Liam Kelly and, like I say, probably Jordan Shipley. And then the front three will be Luke Thomas on the right, Bright, Enoch Bakir in their sort of number 10 role, and Jordi Hwula coming in off the left. And then up front, I'd imagine it'll be Amadou Bakayoko, although Connor Chaplin did make his return from injury at the weekend, so there could be potential for change there.
And moving on to the Sunderland side, where is it you see, where's Coventry's weak links, and which players do you fear from the Sunderland side?
It'll be an interesting test. I don't know. I did read somewhere that he might be injured, but I might have got this wrong. But Aidan McGeady, I don't know what his situation is. Yeah,
he was injured on Saturday for Rochdale, but we're hopeful he's going to be back at least for Saturday. Maybe obviously by the time people listen to this, we'll know. But I think we were hoping he'd be fit for Burton, so he should be fit for Saturday. Yes.
Yeah. So McGeady, obviously a quality player that he is. Even though Dion Sterling's been incredible, sort of this year at I think he's 18 or 19 on loan from Chelsea. I think this will be one of his biggest tests this season, given McGeady's experience. And, he had a great game in the Checker Trade final. I think, again, he's a player that's too good for this league. And I think you've got a number of players that are too good for this league, and shows why you're at the top end of it.
Hopefully, by the time this is out, we're going to be in the automatic places. I feel like I'm jinxing it now. With one thing I think a lot of fans have found quite interesting is a lot of fans from other clubs have talked about our budget and what we've got in this league and things like that, and we don't necessarily agree with it. But you mentioned before we've got a lot of players that are like way too good for this league, and McGeady's definitely one of them. But were you surprised were you expecting us to walk the league, or do you think it's gone more like you would expect?
I'm really not sure, because obviously the last few seasons you've had, I was expecting there to be a turnaround and you eventually to pick it back up. And I did have a feeling you'd be right at the sort of top end, definitely in the playoff contention without a doubt. But every time when I've looked at the table, I didn't realise how many games you've drawn this year, which, if you'd have turned any amount of them into wins, you'd be flying. So it's just a case of, I don't know, I haven't seen as many games as you have, obviously, but I don't know. I just feel like perhaps, has it clicked yet to a certain extent? Obviously, you're doing very well, but just the amount of draws sort of surprised me.
Oh, yeah, you're massively bang on with saying, have we clicked? I think up until this week, a lot of us have said, has there been, when are we going to click properly? Because we kind of just ploughed on. But the past few weeks, we look like, since the Checker Trade final, we look like we've kind of clicked. But the one thing that I suppose has hindered us is there's a lot of teams will come and it's their cup final. I'm kind of pleased we're playing Burton and Coventry for the next two games, because Burton have played at the Stadium of Light before. Coventry have played there countless times, and although it was a different side, your fan base won't feel like that. That could play in our favour, because I imagine coming to the Stadium of Light, of all the teams in this division, Coventry are not going to be sitting there thinking it's their World Cup final.
No, definitely not. I mean, that was a Premier League game not too long ago. So it's two teams that are used to playing at big grounds. And I think it's quite a welcome rivalry there, to say the least. It's going to be an interesting game, because I don't think we're going to be the type to be like, oh, this is, we have to win this game. It's our chance at a big stadium. So it'll be interesting to see how we sort of approach things.
You mentioned about the rivalry. I did want to touch on it. It's a funny one, because, I mean, I remember 97 very well. I don't really remember the first time that well. And it still irks me to this day, but I'm kind of over it. It's a long time ago now. But I don't know whether you saw, and obviously I was a bit cringe at it, to be honest with you, but shouting at the Jimmy Hill statue, we had a fan, and it was a bit cringy, if I'm honest, from my perspective. But how do Coventry fans take that weird Sunderland-Coventry rivalry that seems to exist?
I mean, I've only been sort of told properly about it by my dad. But when I've seen all these things in the past, I've been like, why are they? It's obviously not a local rivalry, so why is this sort of happening? But no, I think it's sort of, some Coventry fans see it as, it wasn't the sort of fans that did it, so to speak, and everything like that. And it's quite a unique sort of thing to have angst towards. Obviously, but again, it's a lot of people think, oh, it's happened in the past, and we've experienced sort of relegations and things like that. And although, like you say, that whole Jimmy Hill statue thing was a bit odd, and I don't quite get what that achieved, but there you go.
Not much. But it looked like he felt better, didn't it? Which is nice of him.
Yeah.
In reference to I'm with you on that, on the rivalry. I mean, obviously, I've got about 10 years on you, and I, like I say, remember 97. But Coventry, I like to beat you, but I like to beat Leicester. I like to beat a lot of teams. it's very much it's more of a rivalry than some, but not much.
Yeah.
So I suppose the big thing for me, the final thing I wanted to ask was predictions for Saturday. What are you thinking the game's going to go like?
Well, my initial worry is that our players might see that after the game against Bristol Rovers and the fact that the playoffs are probably out of reach now that our season's sort of over, and that's always a concern that we could put our feet up, be already on the beach, and potentially get rolled over if we don't turn up. But I'm thinking that Mark Robbins won't sort of stand for that and allow that. I'm thinking they'll see this as an opportunity to for some players to stake their claim for a new contract next season, for some of the youngsters to stake a claim to be within the first team next year. And if we go to Sunderland and get a decent result, then that shows we might have a decent chance next year. But prediction-wise, I would say I do get the feeling that you will probably win. But just because I want to say that we'll win, I will go for that we'll sneak a 1-0 victory.
That'd be catastrophic for us, that. Are you going to the game on Saturday?
I'm not, unfortunately, no.
Me neither, weirdly enough. I'm away in Sweden. I'm missing the weekend game. Away in Sweden for a couple of days, which is probably going to ruin my bank balance, but there you go. But my prediction for Saturday, well, whenever I'm not at the game, we tend to draw 1-1, which scares me a little bit in how important the game is. I can see 2-0, and I'm going to go for a clean sheet because of the way you played on Sunday or Saturday.
Yes.
But you never know with Sunderland Coventry, because you have had a kind of a hoodoo on us as well over the years. But thankfully, that's always been at the Rico or Highfield Road. But where I always forget to do this, but where can we find you on Twitter, and where can we find the stuff that you write? Because I know you've done a little bit for Coventry Live. You did a little bit about Eastleigh as well. Is that right? Where Stuart Donald came from?
Yes. So my Twitter is George D Baker _. I'm currently a university student in my third year, so I've done bits of work experience. I've worked at the local paper, the Coventry Live. Did a bit of helping out with the media team at Eastleigh for a couple of months, and I do a bit of work for a very local team down here, the AFC Portchester. They're quite far down the pyramid, but it's a nice a very nice club to be a part of, and it gives me good experience. And I'm just trying to work my way into a career in sports journalism, which is ultimately the goal.
The aim.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think my time has passed for that. I'm sure some listeners will tell you. With Eastleigh, actually, I did want to touch on that. Did you work with them when Stuart Donald was there, or was that after?
Just trying to think. When did he leave?
He just left last season. Only left last season. Yeah.
So yeah, he was still around. I was only there very briefly for a couple of months, but no, it was very enjoyable. Eastleigh is definitely a club on the rise, and I don't think it's too long before they get a spot in the Football League. They're doing good things. I think they are on the cusp of the playoffs in the National League. I
believe so.
Yeah. Just following it from other guys on my course that I know do the media, who do a great job. But yeah, no, they're definitely a club that I think are going to climb high if they keep going the way they are.
Fantastic. Absolutely lovely chatting to you, George.
No problem.
I would wish you luck on Saturday, but I don't mean it. So there'd be no point in me doing that. But good luck for the rest of the season. I'm not sure every fan would do the same, but there you go. That's the way it is. That little weird rivalry we have. But thanks for coming on. Thanks for giving us a lowdown on Coventry City, and enjoy the rest of your week, my friend.
It's been a pleasure. You too. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.
Some exchange betting companies run short-lived promotions, like months-long offers of low commission. At BetDAG, we wanted to change the way we did things, so we set our commission at 2% permanently. That's 2% on football. horse racing, golf, almost any sport. 2%. That's just one way that BetDAC is changing for the better. For the better, like you. BetDAC, the 2% commission exchange.
Over 18s only, please gamble responsibly.